Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about the updated version of my Forbidden Rite Totem Hierophant. I'm filming this at the end of day 5 of the league, and by now I have cleared all invitations with this build, including the Feared, and refined the version quite a bit from my last video. This was by far the easiest Feared and hidden invitation kills I've ever had at league start, and I was overall extremely impressed with how the build improved after putting more currency into it, going from last time's 3x to about 14x, more than doubling our damage in the process while keeping the defenses very similar. There seems to be no end in sight, as there are still a ton of upgrades to chase, and overall I think this build's potential hasn't been reached in the slightest yet, making it a very exciting build to take into week 2 as well. For defenses and mobility, we did also introduce a shield charge setup, which I was first a little hesitant to use, but with the nerf to flame dash and dash, might now just be an auto include for most builds. Thank you for everyone who contributed in the comments. Some suggestions were awesome, and it is always great to see what kind of synergies people come up with when a new skill releases. In this video, I will go over what I upgraded in terms of items, how I changed my gem setups including a 6-link, and how I redid my passive tree to be more efficient, including a second large cluster jewel, as well as introducing 2 new medium clusters. I will then go over how to upgrade the build above my investment even now, to give some goals for people who want to stick with it for longer. With that being said, let's get into the build portion of the video. Alright, so there we are, part 2 of the Forbidden Rite Totem build. Now, last time around, obviously, we didn't have a lot of investment. It was like 3x investment or something like that. So people asked me, well, how can I upgrade this? And obviously, making a follow-up video is very, very crucial, I think. So I'm going to show you here what I upgraded. We kind of jumped from 3x to around about 14 to 15x now. I'll go over all the upgrades, what changed in my gem setups, what changed in my passive tree, so maybe that could help you out. Now, if you haven't seen part 1 of this build guide, I will link it down in the description, but basically I go over how Forbidden Rite actually works. I go over the basics, and it's kind of a league start guide as well, because I'm doing basically everything up to Cyrus with an kind of a 3x budget. This one is more geared towards actually finishing all invitations, like I said, including the Feared. So it will need a little bit more investment, so we're going to talk about that. But yeah, let's jump into the items. Now, I've gotten a lot of feedback about this build. Obviously, a lot of people are playing it. A lot of very good feedback as well. Number 1, I still do not have a shield with +1 totems. I will explain to you why. Now, here's the thing. In a perfect world, I would want +1 totems, spell damage, life, and the rest, and it's all fine and dandy. But if you want a shield like that, you're going to have to pay like 10x, if it even exists. So it's just not a realistic thing. So you can go either I get +1 totem and a pretty much trash shield, or I can get spell damage, cast speed, life, mana, res. A shield like this. Like, a shield like this is cheaper than a +1 totem with like less than half the stats on here. So that's basically why I don't go for +1 totem. As well as that, if you think about +1 totem, we're currently at 6 totems. So I just want to explain that the 7th totem, having an uneven number of totems with multiple totems, is very awkward. So you see how I summoned 2, then 4, then 6, and now if I summoned again and I had a 7th totem, it would respawn one of the totems I already had and spawn a new one on top of that, because it goes to 8 because we have multiple totems. The totem that gets despawned will not cast in the time where it gets despawned, so you're actually lowering your DPS a little. As well as that, the good thing about multiple totems is that you only have to click 3 times for 6 totems. Now, if you water that down for 4 casts for 7 totems, it's not worth as much anymore. And I definitely don't want to go around and kind of cast 7 totems by hand. It's very, very awkward to do and very, very slow. So that's also kind of in there. But I will say that obviously in a perfect world, I would prefer like +1 totems instead of a mana roll there. But the rest of the stats are just as important, just to point that out, because this was a suggestion, obviously, by a lot of people. But yeah, I felt like I needed to point this one out. Things that didn't change are, for example, the helmet. I got a Forbidden Rite additional projectile helmet early. I got life plus triple res and a little bit of mana in there. I'm very happy about it. I have an amulet that's okay-ish. It has life, mana, AoE, area, cast speed, everything I need. I have 2 Kikazarus, which I'm not yet willing to replace. We'll talk about that in a second, but I have these basically didn't change, as well as my leather belt also didn't change, because I didn't feel like the investment into a Stygian Vice was actually worth it. I had some other things to do first. Now, what changed is the 6 link on the Soul Mantle. So I got the 6 link. I didn't get lucky or anything. My first 6 link, I usually don't gamble. I just buy it straight up. So I bought this one for like 6x, I think it was, and replaced my 5 link. Now, as for the wand, we have a lot more spell damage on this one. We have more cast speed, more prod speed, everything. A little bit less mana, but it's worth it in the end. This is like 7% more damage or something from the last wand. But then we have, as well, we have an upgrade in the glove slot. My last gloves were really, really bad. This one has a lot of res, and it also has Calling Strike, which is the big boy here. It's a more damage multiplier. Things automatically die when they're 10 or less % health. Huge damage upgrade for the build. I did pay quite a lot for this one, though. Now, the boots, I wanted to get really juicy boots in order for it to be worth it to get Cannot Be Frozen on it. So this basically replaces our Wanderlusts. If you don't have the currency for this, this one, the base costed me, I think, 50C. Because Chaos Res is obviously very wanted, and then the craft costs you like an X, so it's around about 2x-ish that you'll pay for these, but this is like one of the last things I actually upgraded, so you can definitely keep your Wanderlusts there for a minute. As for the flasks, I didn't really change anything. Once again, there's a lot of YouTubers out there that have already already did a deep dive into flasks, so they can tell you more about optimal setups. Now, as for the gem setup, there was a lot of input on when I said greater multiple projectiles might be my next link. People were pointing out that volley functions very similarly with this kind of skill, and they're right. Definitely an oversight of me, but in the end, I didn't go for either of them, and I just want to explain why real quickly. Now, to showcase why, I just put the Forbidden Rite in a 1 link for now. And basically, as I explained last time, if you only have 2 projectiles, it will perfectly overlap. If you have 4 projectiles and you have enough AoE, it will also perfectly overlap. But the more projectiles you add, for example, let's put Greater Volley in here and do it. As you can see, it doesn't perfectly overlap anymore, and that is with 6 projectiles now, with Greater Volley, the +1, and this. And then you have Rain of Splinters on top, making it 8 projectiles, so it will have even worse overlap potential. So at that point, we're not talking about like what it shows in POB, like a 44% more multiplier. We're talking more like 20-ish or something. And at that point, something like Cruelty actually gets better, which is 24 always. The thing you also have to remember is that you do get more damage, but it's only on the initial cast. All the projectiles that fly out, all the projectiles that have fires extra projectiles at up to 7 surrounding enemies are not affected by this. They don't get more projectiles, but they do get the less damage multiplier from Greater Volley, basically decreasing your clear by a lot, because not only do you now get a less damage multiplier, you also don't have Cruelty. Cruelty counts also for the secondary projectiles. So that is the reason why Greater Volley, in my opinion, is kind of a bait. Same with GMP, obviously. These are a bait because you're not actually overlapping. And I have, like, in my build, I'm basically max AoE as you can go for this build because I'm actually going for Sanctuary of Thought. So, yeah, there's very little chance that you will actually overlap 8 projectiles. I think it's more of a cosmetic, a POB thing. In my opinion, this setup works way, way, way better. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the 6 links. I have Forbidden Rite here. Now, something I probably didn't say right last time was that obviously you want a level 21 Forbidden Rite for the 8th additional projectile. Sure, what I meant with you don't really want to focus on gem levels is beyond that you don't really get much from gem levels because the damage doesn't really scale that well, because the life sacrifice does not scale, which is most of your base damage, whereas the base damage that actually scales is very, very little in comparison. That's what I meant, just to clarify. Forbidden Rite level 21 is still really, really good. Then I have an Awakened Control Destruction. This actually dropped for me, so I'm kind of solo self-found here, but yeah, I wouldn't ever buy this one. I just dropped it, so why not? It's like 1% more damage over my Controlled Destruction. Wow. I still have the faster casting, like I said last time. Even though this only gives us like 19% more damage, this skill doesn't have that many good, actual good support gems. And I already talked about why I don't want GMP or Greater Volley in there. And this makes the totems just feel way better, is the thing. Like, the faster you cast, the better this is. Now, be sure to note, though, that if your totems do not have a lot of Chaos Res yet, for example, if you're still early and you don't have this node yet, this will kill your totems faster because they can't out-regen all the damage they take from Forbidden Rite. So make sure of that. But yeah, Void Manipulation, no-brainer. Should probably turn this one. Pretty dumb. Multiple Totems, no-brainer. And at the end, we have Cruelty. Once again, it's just for the 24% more damage. Everything else doesn't really matter. Now, I still have Cast on Death Portal because, honestly, the higher I went into tiers, the harder the content got. Obviously, right now I'm almost exclusively doing T16s, so that's that. I also have to do invitations and stuff. I still have the Clarity and the Vitality in there. And something I forgot last time, I don't know why, is that obviously you should run Shield Charge. That's also one of the things that I really, really like from this version over the Power Charge version, because the Power Charge version has to run 2 Vol batteries, which Void Battery, which means you cannot run Shield Charge, and Shield Charge is so smooth in this build. Also, you get Fortify. And I also put faster attacks on there, although I don't have it all the way leveled because I don't have the dex for it. Something important to point out also, people were telling me to go with a dagger, and so I can go with Whirling Blades. Both are fine, right? Whirling Blades might be a little bit faster maybe. It's definitely a little bit less clunky, but the thing with Shield Charge that's actually really, really nice is it's an AoE skill that gets basically multiplied by all the AoE we have. Also from this note here, so you don't really have to get into a pack to get Fortify, because the AoE of your Shield Charge will actually carry, and you just have to hit 1 on the outskirts of the mobs to get the Fortify effect. So with Whirling Blades, you have to really whirl into the packs to actually get the Fortify. So that's why I think Shield Charge is vastly superior. Then we're also still self-casting Wither. It is supported by increased duration and faster casting. As well as that, we have a Despair, and a Steel Skin. Steel Skin is on left mouse, so it always gets activated. I don't have to think about it. And both are supported by increased duration. Gems, the aura setup is still Clarity, Vitality. It's very defensive, I know. If you want to go for like Glass Cannon, Zealotry, Skitterbots, of course, go for it. But yeah, I didn't feel like this build really needs it. Right now we're sitting around about 6.5 mil DPS. One totem is around 1.1 mil. So it's more than enough for me. I really felt the mind over matter a lot, so I would definitely encourage you to do that. But if you're missing damage, I guess go for it. And at the end, just a Flame Dash, because Shield Charge does not get you over hurdles. All right, so now for the passive tree, quite a bit of things changed here, especially since we got another large cluster jewel. We'll talk about some of the tech that some of the people actually recommended, but number one thing for all the people who pointed it out, yes, I was a little bit stubborn at the start because I really like the Soul of Abereth Pantheon, and having the unaffected by burning ground and the reduced ignite duration, although I didn't get it in the end, is really, really nice. But yeah, in the end, I decided it's probably for the best to actually remove Sanctum of Thought and get the Soul of Ugol, which now has 20% reduced effect of curses on you, basically the same as Sanctum of Thought. So this is kind of a payoff. I still think it's kind of close because Ignite is kind of rough. But yeah, in the end, it made the gearing a lot easier. And since we needed so many points for the second large and the number 3 and number 4 of the medium cluster jewels, we kind of had to do this anyway. So very good suggestion for all the people who said that. Now, other than that, I did actually remove one of the AoE nodes here. I did remove the placement speed here. I also removed all of these. I felt like the placement speed is more than enough because now we actually got also got the 20% from Ancestral Echo here. If you feel like it's too slow, I don't think you will ever feel like the placement is too slow. These points are just not that efficient anymore once you have all of the cluster jewels. But at the start, Shamanistic Fury is a powerhouse. Other than that, what did I change? Not much. I grabbed this here because it's basically 1, 2, 3 points for 15 life and 5 all res, which is better than just putting them here. But yeah, now let's go over the cluster jewels real quick. So number 1, whoever recommended this one is a genius, of course. 10% chance to taunt enemies on projectile hit. Somebody pointed this out, and it is great. It is absolutely insane, especially when you have faster casting in your setup. You're always going to taunt enemies. It just helps out a ton. So definitely get a projectile damage medium cluster jewel with this. As a second thing, I got Repeater. I didn't really feel like I needed the extra projectile speed from other notables. So 30 damage, 8 cast speed is huge for a node. And yeah, for the last one, I basically just got the second Ancestral Preservation, and I also have the placement speed and cast speed, which once again kind of substitutes for removing this one here. But how do you upgrade this build further? You might say, Palsteron, your 1415X version is cute, but I'm a grinder, okay? I have a lot of currency, and I don't want this noob stuff you're talking about here. I want actually big boy items. So let's talk about some big boy items. Number one, Coward's Legacy is huge for this build because it gives you vulnerability, which is usually a problem. But if you are the Soul Mantle version, so if you are not, this is kind of not really that much of an option. If you're a Soul Mantle version, you can do this easy because you don't get affected by the curses, and you can just go Pain Attunement and Low Life. This will give you a 30% more damage, and you don't actually have to go Low Life, you just count as Low Life. Absolutely huge upgrade. I would tell everybody to get one if you have the currency for it. Now, I should have maybe gotten it instead of maybe the boots. Maybe I didn't want to put on Wanderlust for the second review, okay? I'm guilty, all right? I didn't want to go here like a pleb with Wanderlust, so I made these boots. But you probably want to get a Coward's Legacy at some point. It will give you 30% more damage, with Pain Attunement. Huge upgrade, especially since there's not much else to do with your belt slot, really. Next up, Viridi's Veil or Atziri's Reflection. I already talked about it in the last video. These are very, very wanted, not only for this build, but for a lot of other builds that struggle with map curses, just thrown in there, even if you're not Soul Mantle. It's really, really good. Basically, just make it so you can replace your Kikazarus and go for some better rings. Now, one thing I also want to point out is if you don't want to go for Viridi's Veil or for Atziri's Reflection, which I would tell you to do as soon as you have the currency, there is also a reduced curse effect mod on rings. And it is this one here. So as you can see, I just made this ring real quick. Reduced effect of curses on you. Now you might say, well, 35% is not going to cut it. But with the Catalyst, this actually scales with caster Catalysts to up to 42%. So you need a 34% roll for this to be basically a Kikazaru. But then you have a whole ring that you can customize. So if you have a good ring like this, you can maybe even keep your Kikazarus and not go for Viridi's Veil. One of the things with Viridi's Veil and Atziri's Reflection, number one is Atziri's Reflection doesn't give you any damage. So you would lose like 90% spell damage and 10 cast speed, or maybe even another totem on your shield. And for Viridi's Veil, I can say it's going to be almost impossible to get a Viridi's Veil with +1 projectile. And the +1 projectile is actually huge because it doesn't have a downside like Greater Volley or something. So it's actually kind of a payoff still, and you should actually think about that kind of stuff. It might actually be worth it in the end to go for 2 of these. Now, if you go for a reduced effect of curses ring, use an Awakener Orb and actually get it with Despair on hit. Now, Despair on hit should be a Hunter. I put in Hunter, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Despair on hit. So basically, you get a ring with 40% reduced effect of curses and curse enemies with Despair on hit. As you will probably know, a lot of the times you don't have time to put on your Despair, or it's kind of awkward. You can't really precast it, and you want to put down your totems and then Wither. So it takes away from your Wither time to actually have to put down the curse. So having that on hit with increased effect is huge. If you can get a ring like this, that's huge. So as soon as you can afford an Awakener Orb, make yourself one of these. This is just another alternative to Viridi's Veil and the Atziri's Reflection that I wanted to point out. Other than that, and something I would have done if I had more currency, was actually make gloves with Calling Strike as well as Unnerve on hit. Unnerve on hit, you can get those two together with an Awakener Orb. Once again, just see what you get and keep it. Unnerve on hit basically makes it so enemies take 10% more spell damage. And last but not least, go crit. Go ahead. It's good. Like everything I said before is if you're actually under currency pressure. So, but if you're somebody who has 50x plus, I don't think there's much reason not to go crit. Don't get me wrong. It is just that you will have to invest significantly for not as much gain as you're used to because you don't have Diamond Flask anymore. That is automatically 20 to 25% less damage for every crit build. So you're also not going to get as much gains from just stacking it without having actually lucky crits. That's what I wanted to point out. But obviously, if you have enough currency to replace your jewels with like crit multi for spells, and then 1 or 2 good prefixes, I mean, go ahead. Obviously, you can PRB it yourself. You will actually get better. One of the reasons it works in this build, also, you don't even have to go par charge version. I'm going to tell you. One of the reasons it works in this build as well is because our support gems are not that good. So you can replace these 2 here with increased critical strikes and increased critical damage. And it's going to be most likely an upgrade if you fully invest into it. What I want to point out here is don't go into it too early. You're actually not going to get that much out of it rather than just scaling totem life, honestly. We have another multiplier in this build that we can use, which is totem life, which scales the base damage of our forbidden rite, which is why going crit is just not as valuable. Introducing another multiplier on top of that, until you have enough gear to actually be able to back that up, I just don't think it's the play. But don't get me wrong, if currency is not an issue, at the very, very tippity top, it is probably always going to be a crit build, let's be real. So yeah, if you do that, obviously take all the crit notes that you need. Now, obviously, Shaman's Dominion, I don't know if it's worth actually pathing here for all the points, but you can also just anoint Shaman's Dominion. Like, you probably don't want to go staff for staff crit notes, but you have some crit notes that you can use. Also, obviously, Annihilation. You want crit damage with spells on your wand. You want crit damage with spells on your shield if you can get it. Yeah, overall, just try it out. POB it first, though, because you will be surprised as how little it actually gives you without a diamond flask, which, like I said, is still, I think, a change that people have to get used to. Now, there's obviously still a lot of things to micro upgrade here, especially in the flask slot. Bottled Faith might even be worth it if you're not crit, just for the 10% more damage, or it might be a reason to go crit. So definitely always check with that. I just wanted to give you some options here. There's still a lot more stuff you can experiment with. I hope I gave you good guidance on that. As for myself, I will probably be upgrading this build quite a bit more, probably get a Coward's Legacy, probably go for Pain Attunement. Other than that, I don't think I will go for a Viridi's Veil or any of those expensive shenanigans. Right now, I'm basically just completing my bonus objectives and stuff. So after I do that, I might reroll into something else. Who knows? Right now, I'm super happy with the build and how it turned out. Yeah, I hope I can give you some good guidance on this. This will probably be the last update unless I go even another step further. But yeah, I'm sure some of you will get this build way better than I have even. So good luck on that, and thank you for watching. But that's it for the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe. You can also follow me on twitch.tv/Palsteron. I'll be streaming soon-ish, start of September, once I have actually moved to my new place. Now, yeah, this build has been incredible. One of the best League starters I've ever played, even though everything else got nerfed, apparently, which is huge for this. As I said, it kind of saved my league. I hope it did the same for some of you. But yeah, with that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.